Okay, good morning, councillors, officers, members of the public and press. Welcome to this meeting of the Safer Hartlepool Partnership. This meeting is a remote meeting and it'll be live streamed on the website and recorded. I'll now hand over to Denise Wimperney, Democratic Services Team.
Thank you, Chair. We'll begin the meeting by way of a roll call of all those in attendance remotely, and may I request members to confirm they have a paper copy of the agenda and can both hear and see councillors in the meeting. I'll now begin the roll call. There just seems to be a little bit of interference. Can I just check that everyone has the microphones on mute, please? Thank you. Councillor Moore?
Yes, I'm present and I have all of the paperwork.
Thank you. Councillor Tennant? I think Councillor Tennant's with us.
President, yeah. I've got all the paperwork.
Thank you. Denise McGuckin? Tony Hanson?
Morning, Denise. Yes, present. Have the paperwork.
Thank you. Craig Blundred?
Yes, present and have the paperwork.
Thank you. Jill Harrison?
Denise, it's John Lovett. I'm standing in for Jill today, present with paperwork.
Thank you, John. Sharon Cooney?
It's I'm Acting Chief Inspector Mark Howarth, standing in for Superintendent Sharon Cooney and Chief Inspector Graham.
Sorry, it's Mark.
Mark Howarth, H-A-W-O-R-T-H. And I do have a copy of the paperwork and can hear very clearly. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Oldroyd. I understand we have apologies from Peter Graham.
So I think Lisa would apologise for not being able to attend, but I'm here in her place.
And it's Simon, isn't it? Simon Smart. Yeah, thank you.
It is, yes. I must say that I haven't gotten a copy of the agenda.
Okay, we'll sort that out. Anne Powell. No. Darren Redgewell. Do we have a representative from the fire brigade? I understand is a substitute.
Yes,
we
got
Redgewell.
Darren Lane for Cleveland Fire Brigade.
Right.
And I've got the paperwork.
Sorry, are you substitute for Nick Jones, Darren? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, Darren Redgewell is the Durham Tees Valley, so I don't think Darren's present. Thank you. Joanne Hodgkinson? No. Angela Corner? Karen Hawkins?
Morning, Denise, present and have the paperwork.
Thank you. Sally Robinson?
Yeah, morning, Denise, I'm here and I've got the paperwork.
Thank you. And Sylvia Pinkney?
Morning, Denise. I'm here and I have all the paperwork. Thank you.
Can I now ask if there are any other councillors joining the meeting I have not called, or members or substitutes? Councillor Tony Richardson's with us as well. Thank you, Chair. That now concludes the roll call.
Thank you, Denise. I guess apologies for absence have been covered within the roll call, really, but do we have any others that haven't been declared, just for formality? No? Okay. Any declarations of interests as per agenda item number 2? I don't see any notification from anybody. And then the minutes from the last meeting held on the 22nd of January. Are there any questions or comments from those minutes first? No. Okay. If there are no questions or comments, if we can take those minutes as a true record, and we'll move on. I see no dissent. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to 5.1 then. We have a report 5.1 office from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner on serious violence strategy. Is that Simon?
It is. it is. Can I share this? Would that be possible?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hang on. Can I just check and make sure you've got that? Has everybody got that?
It's loading. Give it a minute. Mine's running a little bit slow, so I don't know if anybody else can see. There we go.
Yeah, you all got that. Okay. So yes, so this is to give you a little bit of background. My role with the OPCC is prevention of serious and violent crime. I'm also managing the Safer Streets project in Hartlepool for the OPCC. So to give you a little bit of background, we held a serious violence summit last February. Feels like a lifetime away, with all the partners and all the partners who attended, and they were Cleveland wide. They all agreed that we should all work together on the public health approach for serious violence. So since that point, I've been awaiting the Cleveland Police Serious Violence Strategy, because this has to align with that. So this very much is a draft strategy, which I would very, very much like your input on, and very, very much like your thoughts, and where I need to add things, where I need to take things away, where you think something isn't correct. So it's very much for your feedback, if you wouldn't mind. I'll go through it very, very quickly. Obviously, this is we don't have we have an acting PCC at the moment. We have the elections in May, which you'll all be aware of. So the new PCC will build her introduction into that, along with the Chief Constable. By all means, stop me along the way if anybody wants to ask any questions. So the first pages are just really about the overview, about the government serious violence strategy, and about how that has worked. The second point is Cleveland, the local picture. So the statistics, I'm afraid, are not particularly great as regards Cleveland. We have, for the history, to give you a little bit of background, the previous PCC and current PCC have been lobbying virtually non-stop to try and get some funding to address serious violence in Cleveland. You may or may not be aware that 18 areas in the country were awarded substantial amounts of money to set up violence reduction units. Cleveland was the 19th. And a lot of that was based on National Health Service data around admissions for assault by a pointed object. Cleveland, it's fair to say, didn't reflect the issues. The stats did not reflect the issues in Cleveland. We had those numbers are per 100,000. Our numbers, if we look at them and think about it, are per 1,000. So it doesn't quite reflect the picture in Cleveland or the issues that we have in Cleveland. The PCC has consistently attempted with the Home Office right up until we had a meeting last month to try and change that funding process, and I am actually on a working group currently for non-VRU funded areas to try and lobby to change that process, because we are not the only area where we have an issue with serious violence and the government does not recognise that we need funding to help to address it. So what you've got here is some statistics up to the end of December, and you know what you can see in reality is that against the norms, against the national comparators, Cleveland has an increase in serious and violent crime against a national comparator of reduction. And we are now second in the country for knife crime, etc., etc. So it's not pleasant reading, but they are the facts, and you know, it kind of it reinforces why we need to address this as a serious issue in Cleveland. The costings are there. I mean, the costings are scary. So it's the background about why we need a strategy, a Cleveland-wide strategy, and why the PCC needs to drive that across all areas in Cleveland. There are elements of issues about why it happens, hence the graphs. And so one of the key things is that definition of serious and violent crime. The government does not, there is not a national definition of serious violence. So each area has to define its own serious violence. Hence the reason we have to wait for this strategy to align with the Cleveland Police one and agree the definition for Cleveland Police as well. So in there you have all the elements of serious violence that we define in Cleveland as serious violence. You will note that it does exclude domestic abuse and sexual harm offences. So it outlines as well how we would address serious violence and the key strands: early intervention and prevention, supporting communities and local partnerships and tackling county lines, misuse of drugs, OCG pathways, effective law enforcement and criminal justice. One of the key things that across the country has been learned is that this is simply not a policing issue. We can't police our way out of this. So it has to be a more collaborative effort, hence the public health approach. Number 4, the mission, values, objectives are the key things that we will do along the way. And the outcomes are inevitably to reduce all serious violence, get upstream, which will reduce hospital admissions for violent offences, ensure partner confidence and community confidence, empower residents, increase resilience, and make sure that we support victims and offenders and communities. So for those who do know what the public health approach is, I'm just going to very briefly go through it. It takes violence as not an isolated incident, and it's not just a police enforcement issue. Those who know the Cardiff model and the Glasgow model will know that the public health approach does work, and it's been adapted by other areas of VRUs. So whilst it's not a one-size-fits-all, it means that we would be able to have our own version of the public health approach. The key things are the analytical, examining what works, ensuring prevention and early intervention, collaboration, linking with all the sectors, and the evaluation of impact on any of the outcomes that we or interventions that we deliver. One thing that I've worked in Northumbria previously, and very much in Cleveland, there is very much a partnership ethos, and it is very, very strong, and it's quite refreshing. So we have that partnership ethos in Cleveland. We know it. We've got lots of evidence of how it's worked in the past, and working with the Safer Streets. I can't shout out enough about how partners are working together. So we have that ethos already in place. So it's about ensuring that we have the analyticals and we work together on it. Now, what I would say is the governance around this unit that I'm proposing is something that I would very much like your thoughts on. Not particularly now, but if you can feedback at a later point, that's great. I would say that, what we've looked at is what's called CURVE. So that's a Cleveland unit for reduction in violence, instead of a violence reduction unit. We did initially also ask a request from the government, something along the lines of 1.2 million to actually implement this. But bear in mind that the other areas have received, so Northumbria have received in excess of 6.5, and I think they're just getting some more as well, million to do this. So we're very much looking at how we can fund this unit and how we can drive it forward. There are different ways of funding that I'm looking into to try and ensure that we can get the money to build this unit together. I think you have got there. So just bear in mind, this is a draft, please, and it's not, the lists are not exhaustive, and that's why I need your help. Behind this, so this is a basic plan for the curve unit. Behind this, you would have all the areas, if we take prevention, for example, all the areas, the ACEs, the child criminal exploitation, etc., etc. You would have performance frameworks and aid partner agencies behind each one of those, and funding streams for those. So it's it's a massive piece of work, but this gives you an outline of what we're thinking about. So governance. And I had some really positive and good feedback from the other CSP boards about who should be included, why they should be included, how this should work. So please do bear in mind that this is a draft, and it is I am very open to be able to change this and build in what your thoughts are, as long as they're appropriate, of course. And so that gives you an idea of how we would see it working. There is also at the bottom a SWOT analysis, strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats, and also a PESTEL analysis as well. So it's draft. It's in its early stages. It's for you to have a look at and be constructive, be objective if you could, please. And I'm a big boy, you won't hurt my feelings. So I would like any sort of feedback. What I would say is that historically, what you've got coming as a CSP is the statutory requirement and statutory duty, which is going through Parliament, was due to go through Parliament at the end of January. I'm not too sure if it's gone through yet, around the statutory duty for CSPs to have their ISTV data, which is their information sharing to prevent violence data, which should be delivered on a monthly basis to you from the NHS or the public health, and that should be coming through to you now. There should be, and I know we've had lots of discussions around this with Rachel and Craig, there should be that should be coming through monthly. I've had quite some success with South Tease getting that delivered. So we're on track to do that. I would ask you as a CSP, do you get those stats currently? If not, it's something that you need to keep in the back of your mind, that we need to drive forward, because those statistics, alongside the Cleveland Police statistics, will allow us to get the better picture as to where to place our interventions, where our real issues are. The police can record where incidents happen, but the ISTV data can also record different kinds of incidents, different areas. The two will not be the same, and it will give us the more thorough picture. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The serious violence profile, the Cleveland Police are now in the process of writing. So we will have that information as well as we move forward. And I think that's kind of all I needed to say, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Simon. There were just two that came up from me. I'll go the second one first because it was the most recent one. So in the curve diagram, there was a reference to LA wardens. I'm assuming that means local authority wardens.
Yes.
Are you hoping that as a local authority then we'd be able to supply some dedicated officers for this role? Or do you envisage that they can potentially be existing teams who are picking up additional roles to help with this? I'm just trying to understand where you would like to see us fit into it, that's all.
Yeah, I would hope that we would be able to attract enough funding to get some additional and build on the work that's already been done. In the event that we can't do that, then yes, it would have to be what's already there.
Thank you. And then with the kind of the overall strategy itself, I am aware, obviously, well, we're all acutely aware of the fact that elections are coming in. And whilst this was a priority for the previous PCC and the acting PCC, any new PCC coming in may have very different priorities that they wish to tackle first. And I think for me, this is a serious issue that we need to continue trying to drive forward and trying to tackle. But I just have a little bit of concern that it may fall by the wayside. So is there any kind of reassurance that can be given either from the office of the PCC that this will be kept on the radar, or is there kind of, can this be driven by the operational side as well to make sure that it doesn't fall by the wayside for any new PCC coming in?
So it's already a priority in the police and crime plan, which goes forward into 2021, and so the office is already committed to doing that, and the Chief Constable is aligned to that as well. So yes, it is a priority. It will stay as a priority. And you're right, any new incoming PCC may have different priorities, but it is there. It will be. It's not going to be forgotten about. I hope not, because that means I don't have a job. No, it's something that we are very keen to drive and will continue driving.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Are there any other questions or comments from other board members? I've got Tony Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. And I suppose it's just a question for Simon in terms of timescales. If partners want to provide comments on the draft strategy that you've just presented, what are those timescales you would like comments by to ensure that obviously everybody has an opportunity to feed into that?
Yeah, well, we're going into PERDA end of March. March the 22nd, I do believe. So, it would be helpful by the first week in March, if possible.
Thank you, Tony. I currently don't have anybody else with a hand up. Oh, I've got Councillor Tony Richardson.
I'd just like to bit of clarification on page 13, 5.1, on the use of moving to wireless society and also the common case of recording mechanism. Is that recording to phones? You know, if somebody phones something in, would it be automatically recorded? Say like antisocial behaviour unit or a crime unit?
I'm not too sure.
It's under the T. Yeah, it's under the T on the pastel chart.
Oh, right. Okay. 2 seconds. So yes, that's about the possibilities in the future. Yeah. So it's about making sure that we can we are future proofing everything that the strategy involves. So it's about making sure that we're ahead of the game, upstreaming. So yes, it's about the secure use of the digital platforms and the wireless society. I suppose that's the best way to describe it. But we're going to take a lot of our learning from the successes of the other areas. So the evaluation of the last, the VRUs that the government have funded has come out, and some of that is around ensuring that we don't exclude people with the wireless society, because that could happen, but making sure that we include more because we include the wireless society in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it is, because we've looked into a few other councils that are using it, and it's a success for them. So if it's there and it's helping, why not use it?
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah.
In a safe way, of course.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right, Simon, then. So there's nobody else with their hands up currently wanting to come in, but what's the best way of anybody to contact you? How would you prefer people to contact you with any comments after today?
I'd prefer, if possible, via email. I think you should all have my email on the invite list. It should be there. More than happy to discuss anything on my mobile number. If you email me first, I can send you my mobile number. More than happy to discuss any elements of it and involve anybody. That's the whole point of having a draft.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. Right, so the recommendations on the report are basically to provide feedback, and we've given some comments and a little bit, well, a couple of questions today, but hopefully you will receive some further feedback from other members from today, and we'll be able to drive this draft forward.
Thanks to all for having a look at that, and any help, any feedback is appreciated.
Great, thank you, Simon. Right, so we'll move on to the second item then. So it's 5.2, the offer of funding from the Tees Valley Clinical Commissioning Group, and this will be Sylvia Pinckney. Simon, could you stop sharing your presentation, please? Sorry, I've just realised I'm still reading it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report, as you say, is in relation to an offer that's been made, one offer of a grant that's been made to the Safer Hartlepool Partnership from the Tees Valley Clinical Commissioning Group. We received the offer from them in December 2020, where they offered us a one-off support for work being carried out by the partnership. The offer is for a £5,000 non-recurring grant for 2020-21. It is proposed that the offer obviously is welcomed, and that the funding is used to provide grab bags for victims of domestic abuse. The concept of a grab bag is, I know the report says it's for women, but it's for anybody that is forced to flee from an abusive situation, to provide basic essentials when they arrive at refuge or other safe accommodation. The contents of a grab bag would include a number of essential items such as toiletries, underwear, a change of clothing, a pay-as-you-go mobile phone with a £10 credit on it, and items of that nature. The grab bag would cost approximately £85 to £95. Domestic abuse, as partners will know, is one of the key priorities of the partnership for 2021, and our strategic assessment, as we discussed at our last meeting, has identified that would remain a significant issue. As such, this funding would be protecting the vulnerable who are fleeing domestic violence, and would contribute towards delivering the partnership's current priorities. Our funder, the funding would be directed towards Harbour, who provide our domestic abuse services at this point in time. The recommendation is that the Safer Hartlepool Partnership agree to the proposals as outlined in section 3 of the report.
Thank you, Sylvia. And personally, I think it's a really good scheme, and it's a good use of this funding. I am pleased you clarified that these grab bags will be for everybody, because although obviously we appreciate that probably the vast majority of those fleeing domestic violence may be women, it is encouraging and it's important of us to stress that this is available for anybody fleeing. So we don't want to make people feel unwelcome if they need help. I've got Councillor Tennant.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fantastic that such a kind contribution has been made towards this, and it should be incredibly valuable for those who absolutely need it. I just want to have one observance that I'm a little, very, very slightly concerned about. It's just that in the proposal on 3.1, it's for victims of domestic abuse. Then 3.2, it specifies only women. I mean, I think really, that men can also be victims of domestic abuse as well. I mean, I accept that women are far more likely, sadly, than men, but this should be provided for both of the sexes rather than just the single. Just wanted to highlight that point. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tennant. Are there any other questions or comments from members? Tony Hanson.
Thanks, Chair. And I suppose just a thanks to Karen, who's on the call. Obviously, it's the CCG that's provided the funding, so it's probably just worth acknowledging a thanks to her for doing that.
Yes, thank you very much, Karen. All funding is always greatly received, but if you'd like to say anything.
Yeah, we have previously I did support to safety partnership in relation to communications. We thought it was really important that the partnership were able to determine how that money was spent that was available, and we felt it was really important that we were able to contribute to the delivery of the priorities being a member of the Community Safety Partnership.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, so the recommendation then is that the partnership agree the proposals outlined in section 3 of the report. Is there any dissent? No, thank you very much. It's Mark. Yeah, Mark, could you? There seems to be quite a bit of feedback comes from your headset or your microphone. So apologies if I keep muting you. It's just because we get an awful lot of feedback. That's all. Right. So 5.3 neighbourhood policing, and this is you, Mark. So I won't mute you for this one.
Okay, thank you very much for this. Obviously, I'm standing in for Pete Graham, who's had to go to the force control room and just to support some new business over in that area for a short period of time. So just in Pete's absence, and certainly on behalf of Superintendent Cooney and Cleveland Police, I'd just like to say certainly since I've been in Hartlepool, I've seen the significant amount of good policing that's taken place with neighbourhood policing teams. There's a positive contribution from the community safety team, and over the last few months, we know that we are building some real good building blocks for our communities around vulnerability, victims first, problem solving, and reducing the risk. With reference to police officer numbers, I know that over the last couple of weeks, we've certainly increased by having a couple of additional police officers delivered to us on the neighbourhood policing teams. I've got an additional sergeant short term at the moment. That takes me up to 4. And I've got a temporary inspector that's come across as well. We're up to 32 officers within the department. That's both police officers and PCSOs, including the supervision, and then the few additionals that I've just spoken about. So again, the investment from both the Chief Constable, who stated his intention is to re-establish neighbourhood policing, is evidenced by the support that I'm being given to do my daily job. The partnership working that we've done is second to none for Hartlepool. The partners are absolutely superb, and I know it's a conversation, and then we basically jump to whatever actions required. Neighbourhood policing's obviously returned to support the integrated Hartlepool community safety team, and during that time I've only seen this go from strength to strength. Some of my observations is the house closures that have taken place over the last several months, antisocial behaviour. It's around the discussions that we all have as partners, and we listen to our communities, and we listen to the voice of our victims. And what's really nice now is from our local councillors going through to the local authority and then through to ourselves, we all seem to be on the same page. We're certainly driving forward over the next couple of months about 7 various different operations. We are commencing one with off-road motorcycles and some of the chaos it causes. And we've already commenced some work around antisocial behaviour and some of the other stuff of fire setting and stuff like that. Again, every morning there's a partnership meeting that takes place with around about 13 partners to discuss what's taking place within our community to represent our most vulnerable and have our community at the heart of what we do on our decision making. And that falls in line with how we're recording that and the performance framework and accountability that we have. I can only thank our local authority and our partners for the hard work and the drive and determination, and I equally want to give that same commitment, if not more, certainly value in our community within Hartlepool.
Thank you, Mark. I mean, for me, and this partnership's mentioned it numerous times anyway, but we really do welcome the return of neighbourhood policing. Obviously, it's something that the community has wanted to see for a long time. The communities that we represent, sorry, and plus it has that added benefit that we all know for you as operational police officers, because you're getting back on the ground and you're getting that local intelligence, which helps you to no end with numerous other issues. I think it's great to see how many officers you've now got working in the department, both PCs and PCSOs. I just wonder how many of the new kind of set of officers that you'll be bringing through in the next year, how much you're hoping to kind of snatch from that pot, so to speak, to try and bolster your numbers. And then also just to thank you for the work that your teams are doing in trying to tackle the nuisance off-road vehicles, because it is an ongoing problem for numerous neighbourhoods around the town. And obviously we look forward to the forthcoming operation as well. Are there any other questions or comments from members? Oh, sorry, Mark, were you wanting to?
Yeah, it's just to respond to that. Again, it's about listening to our community, and certainly I know that our 24-hour morning meeting that we have with all of our partners, and we focus on our vulnerability. We haven't to forget about the problems that are being caused on a day-to-day level with the antisocial behaviour or the off-road bikes and the like. So what I've managed to do now is we've joined that up. That's going to commence our first town-wide operation. Again, it's about bringing the right people to the table, having those conversations, and the local authority. I know that Ms Pinkney is chairing one of the essential boards that we have. So again, it's that value that we are on the same page. So to answer your question with, we are listening to our community and listening to what comes in from our councillors, that is the voice. And I take that personally. I go out and personally meet our victims, or if there is anybody that's become a victim of a repeat and they've been in touch with a councillor, I will pop and see them. The other thing about the officers that you've asked for, we hope in the future we are going to have some form of community-based van, a disruption van, a community-based van. It's just basically up to another 6 officers, but policing is forever changing. I don't wish to promise that at this meeting. What we'll say is our chief is always listening and always talking to the people on the ground. And I know our local authorities and our partners are also engaging at the right levels to the executive. So to me, they've been very good at the moment and given me the additional staff in the 12 weeks that I've been here. And now I just hope this continues for the next 12 months.
Thank you, Mark. I've got Simon wanting to come in.
Yeah, it was just really to say that through my experience with Safer Streets, I would totally agree with Mark. Everything, the joint work is amazing, and we're working all very, very well together. But I would also say that as part of Safer Streets, we funded a mediation post to deal with antisocial behaviour. And that's something that is online now, and that's through Safer Communities. So that's another process that you can perhaps go in towards, or your neighbourhood officers can go towards and make those referrals, and hopefully will have an impact on them.
No, and again, I thank you for that, because again, that has been something that's been long waited, certainly or refreshed, as I would say, from my previous experience in neighbourhood policing. So that's really early doors to try and prevent and reduce the calls coming through. And what I'm finding that's really valuable is we might have a repeat caller, we might have a misunderstanding or a misexpectation. So by having a mediation system in place, it's that early door, we get everybody across the table, we stay equally as engaged until we can try and get the 2 opposing sides or the 2 people on the same page. What I'd also just like to finish off and say is I've also dedicated 1 officer now to going around all of the schools and to target some of the youth clubs. The intervention that's going on with our early intervention team officer from yourselves, and also obviously the commitment from the police officer that's not just only doing it via Zoom, but doing it as well in person where COVID allows. We can never measure the prevention, but our schools is our early points for our future, and we must get that right. So thank you very much, everybody, for the support that's been given.
Thank you, Mark. One final question from me, sorry, was probably about 2 years ago now, each ward in the town was kind of allocated at least two PCSOs, and many ward members will have built up a really good relationship with their local PCSOs. But I am aware that obviously as time has elapsed, some PCSOs have moved on, they've swapped around and what have you. And just speaking from my ward now, I mean, my PCSO is fantastic and she does a great job, but I'm also aware that she's now, I believe, covering 2 wards, both Headland and Harbour and the Debruss. So are there any plans, sorry, to rejig that and to make sure that each ward does have a dedicated PCSO so that we can continue to build those strong relationships?
Thank you, and I welcome the question. Certainly being raised. When I landed, obviously to do the maths, I have 11 wards within Hartlepool that I'm committed to. I've got approximately 15 PCSOs. If you take out a little bit of abstraction with that, it might be either long-term COVID abstraction, for the well-being of the officer, or it might be that we have somebody that's either on sickness or on leave. So you would say you have definitely got, out of the 15 PCSOs, 13 dedicated to policing on a day-to-day basis. That would tell me 11 wards. I've dedicated 1 officer per ward. But what I've done since I've come here, and this is to shake up the dynamics and to provide a better service for our victims and our community, and that is basically saying I have got 11, every PCSO is a ward manager, so they're responsible for driving and being accountable for their wards. So when we now have a 7, 14, 21 and 28-day review of antisocial behaviour and what's going on in the wards, which is accountable and given to myself back in my inspector role. What we have there is we have the ability now to put a secondary officer in. So I think it's terminology and communication. So when you're saying 1 officer's covering 2 wards, they're secondary. And the reason for that is we may have 1 officer per ward, and without going too much into detail, if that officer's on leave and then we have to have a ward newsletter out, or we have antisocial behaviour, we've still got responsibility to provide our victims and our communities with a service. So I've got a second person responsible to step in and drive that energy and bring the police officers in. One of the other things that you will no doubt hear from our police officers and PCSOs is to respond to some of the problems, and I will use 2 areas, Oughton Manor, Fens, and Headland and Harbour. So I'm covering 3 ward areas there. What we do is we lift them up, we take them up, the officers, and they will all be deposited into, say, Oughton Manor for an hour and a half, and patrolling there. Instead of 2 officers chasing 12 or 13 youngsters and then challenging some of the behaviour that might be there, what we do is we technically have around about 6 or 7 officers that's been picked up and deposited into the Oughton Manor area for 1-2 hours. They will then do all of the antisocial behaviour, the S13s, engage with our engagement teams, etc., and pop into the local kins. But then for the next 2 hours, we might pick them up and then deposit them into the Debruss or the Headland and Harbour. What we're doing there is giving our public the service they require, instead of just 1 officer or 2 officers being on foot patrol in that area. And what we see for that, value for money, but I believe some of the terminology coming from my staff will be, oops, I've got 2 areas to cover. We may have an officer that's absent, they might be on annual leave. I still need my communities to be informed of the good work that's going on, and that's why we put secondary officer as a performance framework to be accountable for updating or responding to our partners in our community. I hope that's answered that.
More than answers it. Thank you, Mark. That's a great explanation and it's really useful. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any indication from anybody else. So the recommendations in this report, and before I move on, I'll thank you very much for the report and for answering all of those questions, Mark. But we are just to note the contents of the report, and then we will receive a further update once the neighbourhood police officers are in post. Okay. Great, thank you. Final agenda item then, Operation Grantham update, and this will be Phil Hepburn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm going to give an update on Operation Grantham. Operation Grantham began in November 2019 and was designed to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour from a large and ever-increasing number of aggressive people who were begging. The operation had 3 strands. Strand 1 was the engagement. This basically involved carrying out background checks on known beggars with particular regard to their dependencies, mental health and housing circumstances. There was engagement of known beggars by partners and support offered to them. It's worth noting that none accepted any of the offers of assistance or support. Strand 2 was publicity. This included a press and local media campaign. The public were encouraged to donate to charity and not give cash to beggars. Strand 3 was enforcement. Bear in mind, we're talking about historical elements of this report. So by February 2020, we'd identified 30 people as regular beggars in the town centre. 12 had subsequently stopped begging. 18 had had community protection warnings served. 10 beggars had been complied with CPWs, and 11 of them had progressed to community protection notices. Significantly, by February 2020, the number of beggars in the town had reduced from 32 to 11. Before the court papers could be served on the 11 who had progressed to community protection notices and had breached their notice, we entered into COVID, and the outbreak meant that the courts were closed. When the courts reopened, the evidence that we gathered in support of that meant that there were a 6-month evidential window had expired, so we weren't able to proceed with that. At the time of writing the report, those 11 individuals were still begging in the town centre. The situation has obviously changed since the 2nd or 3rd lockdown, and the latest one now, we're getting obviously fewer reports of begging and aggressive beggars, mainly due to the fact that there are limited numbers to the town centre at the moment. Current position, we have to assume that once lockdown restrictions are eased, the begging could return. The key areas that were becoming complaint areas were actually Middleton Grange Centre and the car parks, particularly the car parks around there, where there was a bit of pressure because of people going to the payment machines to pay for the parking, and there was an opportunity there to request money. The other issue, Cornerstone, are continuing to proactively engage with the beggars. The types of complaints have somewhat changed when we originally started off, not just aggressive begging, but we're also seeing at the time that a number of the beggars were under the influence, actually sometimes taking drugs or had actually overdosed. The option available now, we could begin Operation Grantham again. Obviously, to do so, we would need to gather evidence, and that would take several months before we're in a position to proceed. Disruption, that continues. Both police and local authority civil enforcement officers will move on anybody in an area. However, that's got a minimal impact, and they merely move on to a new location. Use of public space protection orders has been used. They're not new. Middlesbrough Council used them, although the views and the success and effectiveness are somewhat mixed in terms of how that's worked. Those who the PSPOs are aimed at have no financial means to pay, and so they're unlikely to act as a deterrent to them. The options to use community protection notices cannot be seen as total solution to problem solving for begging, but CPNs do ultimately allow courts to manage an individual's behaviour through court orders. This mechanism might ultimately encourage engagement to deal with their associated addictions and dependency issues that the beggars may have. As a consequence, it may be appropriate to consider a more proactive approach to these individuals in the hope that some will accept treatment for drug and alcohol addiction. The recommendations of the report are that the Hartlepool Partnership members note the success of the previous work identified in the report and consider the current position. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. It was a tough one, this, because I know as a partnership and certainly as a local authority, we took an awful lot of flack for commencing Operation Grantham, and personally I think it was unwarranted. We were responding to complaints from the public and a lot of complaints from the public, and I think there's often a lot of misconception around the people who are begging in our town centres, and the misconception that they're all homeless, when indeed we know through identifying many of these people that they're not, and that they are managing to get money from people by that perception. What we were trying to do, and I think we all know what we were trying to do, we were trying to kind of, rather than encourage people to continue to give to these beggars, because all that does is it just sticks a plaster over the underlying problem, doesn't it? What we need to do is to fix this problem once and for all, and if by doing that we can signpost people, we can offer a handout to give a hand up as opposed to a handout, as was said, that will solve it long term. And my fear is that some of these people don't want to solve it long term, because as we have evidenced, quite a bit of money can be made in this by doing this. What has been concerning is the number of complaints that I've received, and I know that elected members have, during the current pandemic, where people have felt unsafe because of the begging around car parking machines and not being able to get close to, not being able to access the parking machines and pay for their car parking without literally being stood on top of somebody. So this is something we need to continue to deal with, but I don't think it's something we need to decide anything on today. Is it? We just need to reflect a little bit, I think, and let's see where we can go from here. But I do really thank all of those involved in Operation Grantham and all of those from our partner agencies as well. Are there any other questions or comments from anybody else? Sally?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose it was just in relation to the concerns raised about those individuals who are experiencing significant issues arising from substance misuse or drug and alcohol misuse, and just to note that we now have a new provider with foundations. Our new service is up and running and integrated. We've put in place a mobile van, and I know that the service itself is very keen to become more mobile and more outreach, and I'm sure the team have made those connections with Kate and Nicole down at Whitby Street. But I think the important thing is looking together around how we can respond to those individuals who are experiencing difficulties arising from substance misuse, and actually engage them at the point of where they are presenting. And I know the team are more than willing to become more mobile in their approach rather than office-based. So I think that will be helpful as well, moving forward with this agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sally. Okay, I don't see anybody else with a hand raised at the moment. So the recommendations for this report then are that we note the contents of the report. Thank you very much, Phil, for bringing this, and thank you for everybody who's been involved in that operation. There are no other items of business for which I consider urgent. I don't think we meet again now before the end of the municipal year, do we? No? Well, just in case I'm not here after May I thank you all very much for your input over the past year. It has been greatly appreciated, and thank you again for today. Enjoy the rest of your day and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye.